Right, recording now. Hey!
Hey! Hello!
Hey! Bow, bow.
She's beautiful. All right, let's do it.
How do we do this? Welcome back to the Aviation RC Noob Podcast. You found us. My name is Joe.
And I'm Matt.
We're here to be with you along your journey and to share our experiences in RC aviation. If you have any questions, thoughts, or want to share a flight story, hit us up at aviationrcnoob@gmail.com. Now, buckle in. Let's take off.
All right, welcome to episode 41. 5 weeks and counting. Good luck.
5 weeks of what, Matt?
5 weeks of a contest. That's what we're here to talk about.
Right.
Yeah. If you remember last time, if you were tuned in, we talked about the contest sponsored by the Hangar RC, ourselves, and RC After Hours. And it's a basically community build contest, design build contest. You got until mid-February to put a submission in for a relatively simple build is generally the idea behind it. And we'll go into it. We'll cover the details a little bit more later. But basically, just getting a community together to build and design and put together a bunch of ideas and just, have fun as a community. Get together, share ideas, have fun, and then go fly, of course.
Hopefully.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we have an airplane to talk about. We're going to talk about the F7F Tigercat. I don't think it's one we've covered before, but it's certainly one that I've looked into in the past. And it is certainly a plane that has caught people's attention during the war and after. As well as we have a giveaway that we want to highlight that is still on. And then I think that'll be it. And we'll talk about what we're doing, what we're going to do in the coming weeks.
Yeah. Well, why don't we, before we get into the fly stories, go ahead and do the housekeeping,
Okay.
one of which would be the giveaway.
Okay.
So we mentioned it. We mentioned it last time, but we're wanting to give away a few listener mugs. Matt, I think we said 3.
Yeah, 3.
Okay, so we're giving away 3 listener mugs, and these mugs are basically just like we've got host ones, but they'll have our logo on it, and then it's got a what'd you say? Like, I listened to hours of this podcast and got
all I could get was this stupid mug.
Yeah. And it's not even a mug that we've had up and available for sale. Mostly because Matt and I just haven't set up a storefront to say, hey, we've got mugs. But
right. Some of it's that, and some of it's like, well, what legally does that need to get into as far as IRS taxing and all that? So it's like, okay, well, there's more to it than just putting up a thing and saying, yeah, let's go sell it. Yeah.
So we're going to be looking into that direction soon, so we can figure all that out. It's just something neither Matthew or I've really sat down to figure out proper.
Right, exactly.
But with that being said, if you would like to be entered to win one of these mugs, send us an email, preferably to aviationrcnoob@gmail.com. And within that email...
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
Within that email, let us know where you're from, what do we say? Well, maybe that was just it. Where you're from, favorite episode. Yep.
Yeah. Let us know how we can get you the mug. So you have to have your name and address, and then we'd love to hear about your favorite episode.
Well, let's hold off on the address. So.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So submissions are in by January 15th. We'll announce the draw winners on January 22nd. Names will be pulled at random from those that submitted. And the reason I'm saying I hold off on addresses is once
we don't need to keep a ton of those.
Right. Once we pull the names, we'll reach out to the winners after we announce them and say, hey, let's get your address, so then we can send them.
Okay,
I don't really know the legalities of having a bunch of people's addresses on file, so would rather not go down that route. So we'll reach out to those who win the drawing and say, now send us your address. Okay.
Very good.
Anything else as far as housekeeping goes?
No, I think that's it for housekeeping. Otherwise, other than, if you like what you hear, and you'd like to hear more, you can go out to the different locations and and promote us, write a review. I think what's probably more effective is talk to people that like RC, or at least would be interested in a podcast like this, and share it with them and let them, invite them to listen.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, so 2 weeks ago, our last episode, right on Christmas Day.
Merry Christmas.
And since then, have we been building or flying anything? Getting into the fly stories. I know I've not really. We recorded that episode. There was some editing that went on that week. That was vacation time for me. So there was some stuff going on here around the house. I did get a little more organizing and work done just with hobby supplies. And then Rachel and I went out of town a few days after Christmas. We went up and saw you for, 2-3 days?
Yeah, it was effectively 2 solid days, a whole 48 hours, definitely. But it was 3 days. So you came in one night and left the other afternoon.
Yep.
Midday.
Got to go up there and get our in-person D&D campaign going again.
Yeah. Whoop-whoop. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. But, of course, that required a lot more prep, I think, than I anticipated. I was like, oh, boy, I need to... Because usually it's just you and your wife that come and stay. And this time we had a couple extra people. We always invite them to stay because there's plenty of room in the house.
Right.
Especially with the kids gone. But then I realized, I looked around, I'm like, oh, I've got like planes on that bed, and I haven't really made that bed up because it's been a while. I'm like, oh, I better get a couple things going on, So, anyway, but it was awesome having everybody over, and we had a really good time. So it was all worth the effort for sure.
Good. And then, other than that, I know I've spent a little bit of time just my gears running in my head as far as this build off that's now officially going. So we'll talk about that more, coming up. But
in a couple seconds.
That's where my head's been the last week, probably.
Okay. But let me talk about what I've been up to in the last couple of weeks since Christmas. Right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Joe's like, well, you didn't do anything, right? And I was thinking about it. We talked, and I did a little bit, but it wasn't nearly as much as I think I anticipated. I went out with my girlfriend and her whole family here. Her dad, who used to fly control line RC, as well as free flight, not free flight, but our regular RC stuff. And he was telling me, he's like, that's like, he started counting on it. He's like, it's like 50 years ago, like 47 years ago. Oh my God. And I'm like, yeah, well, your plane. He goes, well, yeah, if I hadn't busted the tail a little bit, I'd probably be ready to fly shape. I said, yeah, probably. But he says, yeah. So it's been a while, and he's been slowly but surely trying to get back into it and get his grandson a little bit more excited. I don't know how excited he's going to ever get. I don't know. It's just one of those that may not be his thing.
Yeah.
But he does love his grandpa, and his mother was in the airline industry for a while. So he's always been around it, and he seems to enjoy it enough. Like, it's not like he's like, oh, this is awful. Why do we do this? He seems to enjoy it, but like anybody who's starting new, right? Like, these guys are not well-versed in RC. Like, his grandpa, it's been 50 years. And my girlfriend's son, it's been, he's new. So he doesn't want to bust his granddad's like $200-$300 who knows how much plane, just because his grandfather insists that he flies it. He's like, I don't want to fly it. Anyway, so they've got the E-Flight Aeroscout, I believe, is what his granddad has. And then they all have like those little toy flyers, like the Easy Flyer, the freighter, and variations on a theme. But they have like the original ones, the Chinese versions. There's one that looks like a Cirrus. There's one that looks like a what is it, an airliner, one that looks like a C-17. Anyway, so they were flying those, and we had a pretty good day for that. It wasn't super windy. So they were able to fly those around, and they really enjoyed flying them around, right? Which was great.
Right.
There's a number of pretty successful flights, all things considered, with those. And then they brought out the E-Flight Carbon Cub, the little one. It's like a $99 package where it's got a stabilizer, it's got the safe, it's got the AS3X or something like that. And it's got a transmitter. There's the whole thing in there, and it's little. So that wind was almost too much for it, but they flew it around. But I think they ended up having a hard landing and busted the nose cowling off a little.
Oh man.
Which, of course, I think his grandson was flying at the time. I was like, oh my God, I just busted your plane, like has that, ugh. And he's like, it's not. And he looked at it, and he's repaired planes before, long ago, but he repaired them. He's like, oh, this one's easy. Don't worry about it. We'll have this fixed before you even know it. And we did. Like a couple days later, he and I got together and we fixed that. And then he flew the Aero Scout, and his grandpa had flown the Aero Scout a little bit, did a once around. I flew the Aero Scout, did a once around, and then his grandson did a once around. He was doing really good. And then he, I guess, I don't know, started going towards the ground. I'm like, you're going to need to pull up, bud. And I guess he just, I don't know, didn't. He thought the plane would or something. I don't know what was going on. And he basically was heading for the cars, and he started to really panic about it, I think. And he may have dumb-thumbed it at the very end, and it went nose in behind the cars.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, no. And, of course, he's sitting there going, oh, no, I busted the plane, like completely busted. And he did. Like, he busted the front really good. But I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, the tail looks okay. The airfoil is okay. The motor's fine. The landing gear's still on it. You know what I mean? Like, it's really just the front, which is just foam. I mean, that could be built up, replaced. You could cut the thing off and build a whole new thing. Like there's a lot of options with that, and really they don't matter as much as is the rest of the plane intact.
Right.
And so we went over and we grabbed all the pieces and stuff. And I said, look, let's get these all in a bag here. And then you'd be surprised. You can restore this to pretty close to brand new. A lot easier than you think. It's a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle, but it's usually worth it. And so, he's just, and of course the whole time he had, after that, he just felt pretty awful, as anybody does, right? Like if you're flying somebody else's plane and you tank it, it's an awful feeling.
I mean, I felt terrible that time you handed me the first time we went flying.
The Aero?
Second, yeah, the Aero, and like I had like 2 seconds, and it was in the dirt. And then
or the Vigan or whatever, yeah. And you're just like,
yeah, well, it was definitely an Aero. The Vigan wasn't getting in the air that day.
Oh, that's right.
Have
yeah,
enough battery to get it up. Yep.
Right.
And then
and I'm sitting there like, and now from where you're sitting now versus when you're flying then, like it's not the end of the world. Like it's really not a big deal.
No. No. I mean, especially it's
with
not
the
end of the world if you enjoy taking the time to build more.
Yeah.
The building side of it's not like as high up on the list as going and flying.
Right. That's not where you get your joy, right?
Well, I mean, when I do take the time to do it, I enjoy it. Yeah,
you enjoy it, but you're not like, it's not the thing that gives you the most reward, right? For your time. Whereas for me, I enjoy the building, apparently.
Yeah. Well, don't get me wrong. I'm a lot better at building than I am flying, apparently. So
that's not true. You're selling yourself short. Anyway, so we did that, and that was like, I'm trying to think, was that Christmas Day? It was a day or 2 days after Christmas, because we all had time, which is great. So it was ultimately a good time, and I was the whole time I was trying to get a couple different planes up. I brought out the Texan, and one of the solder joints came apart. I guess it was a cruddy solder joint that I had made, so I couldn't fly that like right off the bat.
Now, a solder joint where?
Right at the banana plug to the motor.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, oh, come on. Like, stink. So the whole thing was off to the side. I was trying to get Debbie's glider flying, which I got it flying. I did a circuit, and then I generally was doing fine until I came to land. There was a little bit of a gust, so kind of torqued the plane a little, which didn't do any damage, but it did bust the prop, and I didn't have extra props.
Oh.
Which I was like, oh, come on, what an idiot. Like, oh, I was so mad at me more than anything. But the plane was ready to fly, so now it's, I just double-checked everything. I had taken out the Dean's connector that was on it originally, and I replaced both sides of that connection, both the battery and the ESC to an XT60, which is more universal. I've got more batteries with those connectors. And so here's a tip. If you are going to solder a new connector onto your battery, take one of them off, desolder one side, and solder to the new connector, and finish it up with the heat shrink, so it doesn't have any exposed metal. And then you go back and desolder the other side and solder that on. Do it one side at a time. That way you can't possibly, it's much less likely for you to short the battery out. And then you have the battery connector ready. Yeah. So that's a tip. One side at a time. Get one done, completely taken off, completely put on the new thing, and protected before you go to the next one. Then you are far less likely to have an issue.
Oh, I have one more tip to add to soldering.
Okay.
From Joe's personal book of experience and wisdom.
Oh, we need the jingle for that. Joe's book of experience
and wisdom. Make sure you're soldering with proper electronic solder and not plumbing solder.
I was going to say, what kind of other solder is there? I forgot. Yeah,
plumbing solder. Yeah.
That's for copper pipes and fittings.
Yeah, well, remember, one of my batteries, my battery or my ESC was something, I've got something that I soldered up properly, and it runs with plumbing solder.
It'll run, just it's not the same. I mean, plumbing solder is designed to be melted with a torch.
I know.
I'm just saying, it's a different experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And here I was all this time for years just cursing my soldering iron because I just knew it was my soldering iron. Couldn't get hot enough. Piece of trash. No soldering iron. No matter what soldering iron I get can get hot enough to solder proper.
Right. It's not quite a torch, is it?
Yeah, no. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Well, I mean, that finished those days. And then I went out in the next couple of days, or kind of amidst all that, I was working on the Reptile 2, the Reptile Dragon 2, which I had built a Dollar Tree foam board one. Geez, it's almost a year ago now. And it's awesome. I love it. So I'm like, I have the kit, and I've had it since I built the foam board one, pretty much. And I never built it. I'm like, well, let me, I've got time. Let me just build it. So I spent a whole day. And I thought for some reason it would go together much quicker, but it just didn't. But ultimately I got it together, and I took it out to the field, and I promptly dumped it into the ground. Pretty quickly. It's awesome. No, it was awful. So I dumped it. I launched it once, and it pretty much, I'll call it, dinked into the ground. It kind of leveled out just enough. The tail came back off, and I'm like, shoot. I think I had some glue or something, and so I was able to put the tail back on, and I gave it another throw, one a little bit higher and a little bit harder, and I got it in the air, but the tail elevator was off. It was not set to what it needed to fly. I don't. I guess maybe for where the battery was or what. I don't know. I didn't have a chance to really figure that out because it went up and down like a roller coaster, and then it like tip stalled and did a cartwheel, and the whole thing like blew apart. And I mean, some of that might have been for lack of glue, or it just, I don't know, it just came apart. And I was like, well, these are all big chunks, and there's no actual like tearing of the foam. They're really just the original pieces. Right. So I'm like, I should be able to fix it actually really quickly. So I took it home, and I spent about half hour that night with the what is it? The UHU pour glue, which is the kind you want to use on that kind of foam, EPP. And there's also an alternate brand, and I should have brought it up. It is they have it in the Dollar Tree. I should call it the Dollar-ish Tree, but now because they've raised their prices for all their products. They're now no longer $1. They're $1.25. So
it's not their fault.
No, but now the Dollar Tree seems like a foolish name. But anyway,
well, I mean that was Dollar General in my book all these years. Well, the Dollar General, nothing's in there $1.
No, it's all marked as the round dollar amount.
Mm-hmm.
They don't worry about change. Don't worry about it. Anyway, so there is a general purpose adhesive by Crazy Glue in the dollar store, and that is the same stuff, and it'll work on your EPP. It is foam safe. You should test it just to make sure I'm not quoting a different product, but as I understand it, yeah. So if you are struggling to figure out where the heck I can get some of this, look for that. It's basically like rubber cement is really what it is. It's not quite. So basically you put it on and you let it touch the other side. You kind of smear it together and then you take it apart because it isn't set yet. And then you let it tack up. So it usually takes about a minute to off gas and the glue tacks up and then it becomes effectively a contact adhesive. And then when you put them together, you hold them together for a couple, like 3-4 minutes. I think you had the same experience with your Depron, kind of like with the foam tack, very similar. And then once it's done, it's good to go. So so we did that. I put it together. I went out a couple days later, and there was a bunch of guys at the field, which was fun. It was a full field, which is great. And then I got some help from one of the guys who I launched it and it did the same thing. And the guy's like, dude, you want some help? I'm like, I want to say no, but I know I do. I need some help. And so he helped me kind of help put it back together, get some glue on it, and then give it a throw. So I gave it a throw and I wasn't able to recover the first throw, but I came very close. Like, I'm trying to remember what exactly. Oh, I know. I was able to fly it around. It was like a roller coaster at first. I kind of found the happy zone and I got I flew it a couple circuits around and it was, cause I had to hold it in a position. And this is where one of those times where that Insta trim would have been so much nicer. Anyway. So, I flew around a couple circuits and I landed it. And I guess I landed it. It was pretty smooth, but it was enough to kind of break off one of the tail pieces. And I needed some glue. And one of the guys was able, he's like, here's some glue and borrow some tape if you need it. So I got it kind of cobbled back together because the tail piece came off again. I'm like, well, I don't know what's going on with that. So, but I could tape that on. So I taped that on and I glued the tail pieces. I set it up in the V-tail configuration, glued that back on and made some adjustments that needed to be made. And then at that point I said, okay, I think we're ready. So my friend helped me out again. His name is Corey. So thanks a lot, Corey. I appreciate it. And he tossed it into the air, give it a good, like he ran it and then tossed it. He wanted to make sure it got up there. And then at that point it was a lot closer to a thing so I could trim it. And then I was able to fly it around and I flew it around for, I think the whole thing between the two times, it was like 15 minutes. And I know I had battery left. Yeah, it's pretty good. Well, I had a 5,000 milliamp hour. So it was like a 5 amp hour battery. It's massive.
I saw that brick when I was at your place.
Yeah.
Like, and a brick is the right word for it. What do you do with
that?
Hey,
yeah.
Chuck it at somebody, do some real damage.
I know, right? Anyway, it's a 5 amp hour 3-cell. And I think if that system will run on 4 cells, and I think it will be a little bit more fun to fly on 4 cells. It's just, I don't know. It's a nice cruiser. You're not going to do anything fancy. You can still do loops, but you kind of have to give it a little bit of a run up, like get some speed before you do the loop.
Right.
That kind of thing. It does some acrobatics, but it's not great at it. You're not going to have an awesome time, but you can fly inverted a little bit and stuff like that. Just know, like and it's perfect for what I want it for, which is for having FPV in the nose and flying around the field via FPV. It's kind of cruising around. So it's perfect for that. I look forward to using it that way. I'm looking forward to adding long range FPV. And, with 15 minutes of flight, you can go pretty far. So I'm looking to see what some parts of the field look like that I haven't seen before.
Okay.
But other than that, I started putting together the Marabou, the foam board one. I got one half of the wing done, or I got one wing done. I have the other wing to do and the fuse to kind of put together. So I'm working on that. I did some work on that, and I look forward to continuing. So, but that's it. I think that was what I did. Flew the walk behind glider, put lights on it. Had some fun both at the field and the neighborhood. Mostly at the field.
And you got to show me the walk behind.
I did. It wasn't a great show, admittedly. I'm a little disappointed. But it is a lot of fun, that little glider. It's just a little bit more tweaking to kind of get it working in the individual wind situations you get.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still fun. I enjoyed it. I had a couple people kind of going, "What is that? Holy crap, he's got that. What is that doing there? Is that lights on that thing? It's so tiny." Anyway, it was fun. It was neat to get. Every time I bring something like that out, there's a couple guys who like, "What in the world are you doing?"
Yeah, here comes Matt.
Yeah, that's me. Anyway, so that's it. So I guess that brings us to what else? Oh, the FAA. So this is I'll call it the news. I have not seen any news from the FAA. Honestly, the last news of any kind of rules or anything like that are looking it up. It looks to be some sort of commercial balloon regulation that requires them to have medical, second-class medical certificate on them.
But now, what's involved in a second-class medical?
Beats me. I'm assuming it's some sort of first aid, some sort of immediate emergency medical.
Google.com.
You can do that while I talk. Ultimately, I don't really know, but I'm assuming. And honestly, if you're running a balloon business, I'd imagine the guy who's the pilot of the balloon should probably have some first aid training anyway. You're kind of stuck up there with whoever's up there with you for a while. So if there's a medical condition, you got to deal with it. I don't know. Other than that, that's about it.
Okay.
I figured you can let us know.
Finding second class was not quite as...
I think it's second class. Be confusing.
Second class.
Yeah, second class medical certificate. Anyway, I mean, what ultimately comes down to it is there's no new regulations regarding remote ID or anything like that. There also has not been any rulings from the courts, as far as I can tell, about the remote ID stuff from the oral hearings. Which, if you haven't listened to our last episode, in the show notes is a link. Go listen to that. It's very interesting to see the court's arguments where, they pointedly asked the FAA, well, what do you own? How much air do you own? Is that to the top of the trees? Is it to people's backyards? Isn't that a violation of the Fourth Amendment? Because that's what the argument is about. It's the Fourth Amendment rights of privacy.
Right.
And how the new regulation may violate such requirements or such amendment. But anyway, if you haven't gone, just go back and do it. Take a look, take a listen. It's about an hour's worth of audio if you want to listen to the whole thing. There's a handful of people who are doing some highlights. I know XJet does some. I don't know why I'm blanking on Joshua Bardwell, but he's got a couple of his videos kind of focus on that. So some of them highlight it and some of them focus on it. So look for the one that's right for your time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's worth a listen to, I think, especially if you're interested in this hobby and you'd like to see it continue in ways that don't limit people from entering. It's interesting to see where this is all going to head out for now. Anyway, well, so let's, why don't we continue on? Did you figure out what the second class medical thing needed?
Yeah. So based on, if what I'm seeing is correct, where we thought that was a sort of like a first aid certification for them.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to be medically certified to be able to do certain first aid or better things. This is based on what I'm seeing, is a medical. It's basically a medical, like an amped up physical. So,
Okay, they have to be more fit.
right. So they have to have medical certification in that they are healthy and fit to be doing these things. So it's with them being second class, they have to meet third class standards, which are distant vision 20/40 or better, near vision 20/40 or better, color vision. They have to demonstrate above an average, so the ability to hear an average conversation in a quiet room, yada yada yada. Ear, nose, throat, no disease, or condition, yada yada yada. Blood pressure under reasonable amounts, mental status, and no substance dependencies. No dependence on alcohol or any pharmacological substance in the previous 2 years. But then the second class, so that was third class. Second class steps it up to 20/20 vision.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was about it. 20/20 vision.
Okay. Well, that's neat to know. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Anyway, we're making sure we had that right.
Exactly. Well, good. Okay. Well, that brings us to our airplane of the week.
Yep. Go for it.
Well, I'll call it. It's like fighter history, although this airplane had a couple different roles. We're going to talk about the F7F Tigercat, which is made by Grumman, and it was made in, I believe, 1940. Well, let's say like 1943. Well, the contract for the prototype was started in 1941, on the 30th of June. So mid-year 1941 is when it was contracted, and they ended up getting a concept started in 1943. So it was Grumman's first twin-engine fighter, and it was after the F5F1 Skyrocket, which was pretty much a failure. And but in June, they requested the development for a larger twin-engine fighter for use on board the coming large aircraft carriers. So it was basically, and this is part of one of the things it's noteworthy for. It was the first twin-engine fighter ordered in large quantities to be used on the first aircraft carrier, and it incorporated tricycle landing gear. And it was built into both the single and two-seat variants. They were heavily armored fighters, so for serving and ground support. There were also night fighters, photo reconnaissance roles after World War II and in Korea. So they served a little bit further into past World War II. And then after that, a number of those were actually purchased for use because they have a high payload. They were also repurposed for firefighting.
Okay.
So yeah, let's see.
Now, do you know if these planes did the lake scoops, or did they have to land and be water filled?
I don't know, honestly. I will look into that in a second here. Let me see if I can get through the rest of this material, and then we can maybe start talking about the contest. I'll look to see if there's specifics on that. But the Wikipedia article and some of the military stuff doesn't really cover its post-war operations. And the Wikipedia seems to be pretty light on that. I mean, they have a couple pictures of it, of its secondary use, but some of the livery from that. But they don't really have a lot of details other than like a statement, some were used in firefighting. Like, okay. A little bit more information, please. So I didn't look into that, but it's worth looking. I'll take a look at it and see. Anyway, so this plane was basically designed as a ground support fighter. It's heavily armed to perform in that role. It had 4 20-millimeter cannons. It had 4 50 caliber machine guns, and it also was capable of carrying 2,000-pound bombs on underwing stations or 1 torpedo under the fuselage. And it was first flown in December of 1943, which we all know is closing in, I guess, well, I'm sure it felt like an eternity for anybody there, but closing in towards the end of the war. The F7F was hurried into production to meet the Marine Corps demands for 500 of the aircraft to support Pacific operations. Deliveries began in April of 1944, but changes in operational requirements and production led to production delays, and there were only 34 single-seat models delivered. Production switched two-seat night fighters and designated the F7F-2N, and a total of 65 of these were built. Grumman then built 189 F7F-3Ss, which were similar to the F7F-1, but they were modified with a bigger engine. Pratt & Whitney R2800-34W.
I wonder what all that means.
I'm sure it has to do with horsepower and displacement or some such. Or rotational speeds.
Could be.
Or it could be like my kid. I own the company. My kid likes this number best, so we went with that. I don't know. Usually there's a lot more meaning.
Probably not, but
probably not, but still. I've seen some stranger things. Anyway.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, you didn't get the reference.
No, I didn't. What is that from?
Stranger Things.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I got
the
it.
intro theme.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on.
All right. Further production under the original contract was canceled at the war's end as it drew near, but a separate contract to produce 60 more F7F-3Ns and 13 F7F-4Ns it was their production ending in late 1946. Both those models were configured as night fighters, hence the N designation, I believe. They were equipped with radar and an elongated nose and a larger tail fin. The F7F-4N was equipped with arresting hooks for carrier operations, and the only model in the series so configured. So later modifications produced specifically equipped with F7F-3Es and F7F-3P for electronic reconnaissance and photo reconnaissance, respectively. So It was too late for service in World War II. They basically served several Marine Corps squadrons after the war and later performed close air support, night fighting, reconnaissance, utility missions during the Korean War. They were well designed, and the F7F was one of the fastest fighters of the World War II era. Unfortunately, its operational life coincided with the advent of the most powerful, faster jet aircraft, so it rendered it obsolete almost a short few years after it had began. So
that's disappointing.
Yeah, well, nobody really knew how far that was, how long that was all going to take. So had to keep going with what you knew would work. So these are 45 feet long. They're about 16 and a half feet tall. Their wingspan is 51 and a half feet tall, or 51 and a half feet wide. They have an area of 435 square feet. They have an empty weight of 16,270 pounds, and their gross weight is 25,720 pounds, which, I mean, that's almost 5 tons of equipment, pretty much. So
almost, yeah.
And their max speed was 435 miles an hour at 22,000 feet, which is, like they said, one of the fastest speeds of that kind of class aircraft, where it's a rotary fighter aircraft.
Yeah, it's moving pretty quick.
Yeah, sure is. It had a range of 1,200 miles, which is pretty much the full width of America, I'm pretty sure. if I recall right. I think I looked it up one time. I went, wow, that's really far. But I mean, if you have to fly across the Pacific, I suppose that's a good thing to have. At a climb rate of 4,500 feet per minute, which is really fast. Like really fast. And its ceiling was 40,700 feet. And now, if it helps, its cruise speed was only 222 miles an hour. So it was about half the speed it was where it would cruise. But if it needed to go somewhere, it could boogie.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about its armament, so. It was heavily armored. And honestly, it was armored very similar to the P-61 with the 450 calibers and the 420 millimeter cannons.
Right.
The P-61 just had on a rotating turret for those.
Okay.
So and then they also had cluster bombs, which is different than these guys. But either way, it's similar. But part of the reason why I bring it up, I kind of thought of this. There were two things. XJet had a video, and I'll share a link to it down below. It was just one of his normal, like, hey, we're at the field, we're flying. And two of the guys there have, I think it looks like Motion RC F7F Tigercat models. And they were just flying them around. And the cover picture is one that I guess he colorized it to look like it's gold. And maybe some of the way that the sun glinted, and he could kind of set it up that way, look like it was gold. Anyway, it was but it reminded me. I'm like, I forgot. They're really good planes. They're fun to fly. And so I decided we'd talk about it today. Also, there's a couple foam board models. If you are interested, I'll put a link to each one of those. There's one by Demo, as Demo RC. And he has one that's kind of like faceted, right? It's not curved, but there's, strike marks, and then you kind of create the octagonal or decigonals. I don't know how many sides there are. And so it's sided. So it's still kind of that simple build, but you could easily forego that and peel paper and probably curve that if you wanted to get something a little bit smoother. And then there's even a simpler version, one that really harkens back to the original flight test style planes, where it's 3-sided or 4-sided box with a pretty straightforward wing, done by the Hangar, not the Hangar RC, but Sam. Also Sam. She's really confusing. Buddy in our Discord server.
Sam Hyatt.
Sam Hyatt. That's it.
Yeah.
He put together this relatively simple plan set, and I built it. I think I was one of the beta builders. I think I didn't even care. I was like, "What you did what? Look at that! I could build that in a couple days." So I did and flew it, and it's been a lot of fun since. So I set a link to those plans because they're a lot of fun. We'll put links to a Balsa plan set from Outer Zone. I mean that's anything you could look up. There's a lot of those. And you could also go to Motion RC and buy a plug and play. So all you need is a battery and a receiver, and off you go. Warning, that is far more than I have in my budget for RC planes to buy. I think it's $455 at this minute. But it does have everything. Retracts. I think it has lights. It's a big plane. It's got 2 motors. I think it's a 1.6 meter plane. So 63-inch wingspan, I think. So it's pretty big. Anyway, I as I understand it, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Just know that you're going to be spending more than $100 on that.
Right.
So yeah, that's a F7F Tigercat.
Well, real quick, your measurements of the U.S. were off.
What?
Yeah. So just kind of quickly, and there's some weird measurements where they'll go from the east-northeast tip to the west-southwest, and but basically you're more looking 2,800 miles from east coast to west coast, and like 1,500 miles from north border to south border.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, well, somebody listening being like, "No, Matt doesn't know what the heck he's talking about."
All they got to do is just send us an email saying, "Matt, you don't know nothing," and I'll go, "You're probably right."
That'd be Matthew at aviationrc.com. Send the hate mail his way.
Nice.
MATTHEW.
Holy cow, Joe! Hold on, wait. Thanks for throwing me under the bus. I appreciate it.
There you go.
Nice. Well, in that case, why don't you lead us into the next thing?
That's fine. So, basically, you and I talked a couple days ago. We were like, what are we going to talk about this episode? And so I said, well, we've got this build challenge, so why don't we spend an episode or multiple, we'll see, kind of talking about, since we're both planning to participate, kind of how we're going through this process. So basically, this will be either one or multiple episodes about these projects. And so the thoughts that I had to talk about tonight were what each of us are thinking about doing for the challenge, what our initial plans to approach the builds are going to be, and then if we foresee any issues coming up. Sort of like those issues you expect to encounter. What do you expect them to be, and how do you think we're going to, like, what's it going to take to overcome those? But I guess if that makes sense.
Well, I think it does. I mean, it's the kind of thought you have as you look at, like, all right, I want to do something, but what am I in for? What should I prepare for? What should I get ready? What should I anticipate so I don't get too discouraged if they come up, or to have something at the ready in case it does happen.
Right. And then, of course, there's going to be the unexpected. But
yeah. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh so hard.
I mean, it's you know that as you go through this, there's some areas that you can't plan for yet. So that's sort of the issues you foresee facing. So, I guess I'll kind of head off, lead into this and kind of take the first step. So, I know for the build challenge, I'm going to be looking to build the glider. I was kind of tossing up between the glider and the Spitfire, and I think for actually trying to design something and, do something about it, then I need to revisit my glider, but also a glider is going to be an easier design for me to try to develop than try to jump straight into the deep end on a Spitfire. Okay. As much as I love it, I need to bite off something reasonable.
That's probably a smart plan considering the time constraint.
Yeah. And how much time historically I've spent building.
Those are things to pay attention to. Like I know that I might be able to come up with an idea, a plan set, and build it in a week. But I know it takes me like 3 weeks to get the electronics in. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, a nice thing about this is it'll only need to be a 3-channel. I'm not going to worry about trying to put ailerons on this one, at least not in the initial build. And we'll see if we need them, or if I need them, because my plan is for this I'm going back from my 3 sheets of foam board width on the wings. So I'm shooting for the 90-inch wingspan.
Okay. Are you going big?
Which, yeah, it'll be sizable. But no, my first glider wasn't that big. My first glider only got the 2 sheets. But the challenge allows for 4 sheets. So if I go 3, that leaves 1 sheet to handle building the motor pod, the fuselage, the vertical and horizontal stabilizers, which I should be able to do.
Okay.
We'll see. If I can't, then I'll shrink it down to 2 sheets. But as I was doing the research into gliders, you know that long wingspan or big wingspan, and then traditionally itty bitty little wings. The chord's not very big.
Very thin.
And I remember a long time ago, a while back, it's probably been a year and a half at this point. We talked about just airplane aspects. We went through that series, and somewhere in there you talked about the aspect ratio. I
did.
And I'm sorry that I didn't really understand the importance of it at the time. I was like, okay, Matt's just babbling at this point.
I figured almost 50% of the people listening were just tuned out. Then there's maybe 20% who started listening and then tuned out. And then the other 30% are the ones who were like, I'm designing something now, I need to know, let me write this down. And we're paying attention to write it down and maybe, see what they could find.
So aspect ratio is the ratio of the wingspan to the mean chord, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
mean, basically your
The
chord
average width. Yeah.
And there's calculations for if you're doing a straight wing with like a consistent chord the whole length, or if you're doing a variable chord. So there's calculations for each of those. I'm looking, so I'll be doing pretty much a consistent chord width throughout. I don't think, because I think it also took into account if you sweep the wings back a little bit, there's some of that taken into account in those calculations.
Okay.
I'd have to look at it again, but there was some extra letters in the formula to allow for some of that. But in looking at aspect ratio, and I made myself some notes here. One of the gliders I was looking at just briefly had, and this actual glider, not the RC's, it has an aspect ratio of 33:5. And so essentially that is its wing span divided by the wing chord, which is front to back of the wing. So for every foot of front to back of the wing, there's 33.5 foot of wingspan. It leads to very wide wingspans, very short wings that generate a lot of lift, but without generating a lot of drag. The problem there is, trying to support that wing structure.
Yeah, something so long and thin becomes very difficult to stiffen.
Yeah. And so with foam board, if I do 3 sheets, I'm looking at 90 inches. But if I were to do a 33 aspect ratio on that, on a 90-inch wingspan, I'd have less than 3 inches of cord, which is a really, really skinny wing. And then I wouldn't even be able to have much. What's the top-bottom measurement? The thickness of the wing.
I don't remember. Dang it. I'm looking at something else. You caught me off guard. I don't know.
I caught you off guard and you blanked. Anyway, but it wouldn't allow for the wing to be very thick either.
Right. It's the cord. It's cord thickness is what you're looking at.
Which is going to lead to, with me not being able to make that very thick, is going to lead to not being able to reinforce it very well. So I'm probably
at least not with the spar.
Not in the tradition, not in how we traditionally do the spars. And given that wingspan, a carbon fiber arrow isn't going to be long enough to support it properly.
Right now with 90 inches, I mean, it may be enough. Just know that you'll have a little bit more flex than you're used to in the outer sections of the wings. But the center section, you can still use that. You can still have that in there, and that can be a big difference. I've done one where it's a tri design. So like there's a carbon fiber along the main spar. Basically, it's a pretty swept wing. And so I run it on each wing, but then there's one going in between as like a little triangle, kind of connecting almost into those front spars. Just as a straight horizontal through the main fuse. And so that gives it the bending flexure, and then the other ones keep the in part of the wing stiff. And the outer parts are light enough and they don't have as much load, so they're not going to be, they don't need to be as stiff. So between the three of them, they usually tend to work out okay, but I mean, that's not always the easiest thing to add as a, hey, put this in the kit.
Right.
So it's something to think about.
Yeah. And so sort of the solution I have, which I'll visit in a second. So I'm probably going to end up heading for an aspect ratio of 20 or less. At 90 inches, aspect ratio at 20 would give me about a 4.5 inch cord, which is still pretty skinny, but is more doable. I think that extra 1.5 inches would be valuable in being able to reinforce that wing.
And stiffening, yeah. Yep.
And so what I think, and you and I were talking about before we got recording, I think what I'll end up doing probably is using a wooden yardstick from like Lowe's to have its mount centered on the fuselage, and then I'll have a little. Well, I said 1.5 feet, but that was wrong. No, that's right. Yard is 3 foot.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'll have a little less than 1.5 feet on each side to utilize inside the wing structure. But that should be enough. No heavier than the glider is going to be for it to be supportive.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll figure it out. And I do want the wings detachable because there's no way I can carry a 90-inch wingspan anything anywhere.
Right. Yeah. After you get about 40 inches or so, it's time to look at how you're going to either take off the whole wing and turn it to be able to turn it sideways from the fuse, or take the wing apart.
And then what issues do I foresee? One being which I kind of addressed already, but one being how am I going to reinforce this wing? Because if I'm not going to get much core depth or core thickness, then I don't have a whole lot to reinforce. I thought about taking 2 sheets of foam board, doing like a spar, but like maybe 1.5 inch wide, 1.5 inch wide by 30 inches, the length of the foam board. Okay. And do 2 stacks, do 2 layers of that, and use foam tack and kind of brush it on, and put those 2 faces glued together. And maybe that foam tack would because the foam tack hardened right up on the duck, and so that might have been nice and solid for the wing spar, rather than having to go turn it on its side and do the up down wing spar like we typically do.
Okay.
If I more laid them on their side, so they were layered one on top of the other, so side by side. And then instead of using hot glue, which would have added thickness, trying to run that kind of length and then get it together, that hot glue never presses flat. Using the foam tack, I could smear it nice and thin and get it glued in nice and tight and thin, and then see if that wasn't nice and strong. But it may have been brittle, so one of the problems would have been how to reinforce, and I think I'm going to look into using that yardstick, which, even if my glider was the one, it probably won't be, but if it was to be, then Sam may not need to put a yardstick in the builds. We can just go to Lowe's because they're like, what, $1.20.
Right.
So.
Right, and that's going to be, if you had one that was cut down to 30 inches or whatever the foam board that he's packing away is.
Yeah, that's true too.
Might be able to stick that in there with that package. So that may not be a big deal if you cut it down by 6 inches. But ultimately, I think that's one when you say, okay, let me get a design that works and it's doable. And then maybe as part of the submission comment, I say, hey, look, I put a yardstick because it's easy to just put in there. But if we need to trim it down as a kit, it'll probably still work. And you may want to test that idea yourself. Okay, I'm going to put a spacer and cut my thing down to 30 inches and put them in each slot, and that way when you put it together, it still sits right, and see if it works. And if it doesn't, at least then
Yeah.
Nope, we need 36 inches. Absolutely.
Well, and all this goes out the window if I build it and then slap the motor on it and the motor can't get it in the air.
Right.
That's a big wingspan.
It is.
But it doesn't have to get it up there fast.
If it helps. I was able to take, I built a 120-inch, what is that?
The bird of time.
Bird of time, right? And that has a cord that's was 10 inches or 9 inches or something like that, right? So it's a pretty big, long wing. And I was able to get it into the air, and it started to fly with a 10-inch C-Pack, like the old C-Pack, not the new one where you could jump it up to 4S and really, really kill it,
right?
Which would have been nice. But I did it with a C-Pack. And honestly, if you look at the simple soarer, which is effectively, what is that? That's 60 inches. and a B pack, which is essentially pretty much what we've got here, it flies it just fine. Like there's enough to go pull it around. So if you wanted it to be like all you're doing is bring it up into the air and get it up there, and then just cut it, and then you can go longer. And what you can do is also keep in mind, I guess, the drag area of 60 by 3/4 of an inch. Well, if you decrease it by one layer of foam board, you've just decreased it by 3/4 of its drag, right? So if you extend it out one more foam board width, you might be almost equivalent. You know, because really you're looking at drag. That's going to be what's going to keep your plane from flying or not, for being manageable or not, really. You want to have enough where if somebody launches it in wind, you included, that it still will be able to at least fight the wind, give it a good fight, like a fogey.
Right.
So you have a chance of bringing it back around and chance of bringing it back home. But like in no wind, it should fly fine. You know, in high winds, you're going to, just, know this is what it's for. You're not going to be doing acrobatics on this motor.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the motor is an interesting, I'll call it restriction. I don't know if it's a restriction, but effectively a restriction.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense why he chose it. I mean, it's the one he carries.
Exactly. No, I think it's fine because almost every beginner plane, park-size plane,
it's a solid motor size for it.
That's about the motor size you want. And honestly, the planes he has built that I've flown with, like the 7 and the T6 Texan, like they fly awesome. Like they're really good flyers, and they work great on those motors. So I think anybody in this contest should be able to put together something that everybody will be happy flying. Really, So let's see. So are those all the problems that you are facing? Are you going to put landing gear on it?
No.
Are you going to have hand launch?
I'm going to hand launch a belly land. Which I would love to think that I would have a hard time getting her to set down. She would just be super lofty with that wingspan, but we'll see.
Maybe. Probably. Honestly. Probably.
Yeah. Not as lofty as I'd like her to be, but...
No, that'd be all right, though. Well, good. So I suppose you want to hear about what I've been thinking about.
Yeah, what you got?
Well, I don't know. I want to make... I want to make a canard flyer. I think it's something I want to do. Because I feel like other than the Vigan, I really haven't built or designed one that I felt was very successful. And I would love to do that. But I'm not entirely sure. And considering the timelines, I think I might end up basically, and it's something I've been wanting to do anyway, is my Vance Viking. I want to upsize that. So I'm thinking about making that a B-size motor. So that'll probably be like 160% upgrade. It's probably what it'll be. So instead of being a one sheet wonder, I'm thinking it might be 3.
Okay.
See. Although I've been lately having a hard time trying to find out where the drawings went. So that should be fun. So that's one of the things I was thinking about. The other one is if I do the advanced competition, where I
think you could.
Which in many senses I should. Again, I like building simple. So, I don't mind, right? Like I think there's a certain beauty to putting something together that looks really good, that was simple and easy to build, and you're not worried about it when it crashes. Because you can build one easy. And then the other one would be basically building a B-Pack quickie. Probably putting a 6x6.5 motor on it, or a 6x6.5 prop, even though it'll fly on a 9x4.5. Putting something that's got a lot more bite, maybe smaller, but a lot more bite, and then just let it kind of rip. And do that. Because while I haven't flown the quickie, I've done a test glide, and it glides amazing. Last time stuff that would glide that well, it usually is a great flyer. So I'm okay with kind of upping that project scale wise and seeing what I can put together in 4 sheets. I think I can. I think I can get it. I think I can set it up to be within 4 sheets. That might be the biggest challenge of it. And then the other half is with the original build, I was not happy with where I put servos. And I definitely need to go and figure out a better place or better way to put some of the servos. And configure that up better. Consider that to be a bigger part of the design. Just trying to think. The quickie is another one that's really weird though, because it's a rattan design, so it's very streamlined. That's called part of why it's called the quickie. Is it has a very, very tight profile, and so how do I make? I basically have the ironing technique, and how people have to fold the wings and mold it so that when they put it together, it has that same kind of tight profile for the airfoil. And that when they do it right, it's going to look great. It'll fly even faster. I think it's worth doing. Again, I was surprised that I was able to pull it off with the smaller cord, like with the APAC size or the F-Pack. So I think those two are probably what I'm likely to do. Although a simple canard wing would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay.
Trying to think, landing gear is always, I guess hand launching is always a potential disaster for me. I never, the hand launching seems to be the hardest part. Like if I hand launch it, I've got like a 60-40 chance it's going to be in the ground.
Have you started trying to hand launch left-handed so your right-handed can be on the...
Mm-hmm. I generally try. It doesn't always make it easier, but I'm a little quicker on the sticks. But part of that initial launch, and I guess what I need to start doing is employing my kids to catch the plane during glide tests and stuff. Seriously, like putting in the servos, getting in a basic power system enough where it can glide and I can control it, and then saying, okay, go over there. I want to throw this and see how it flies. So, I mean, that's really the biggest thing is really that maiden flight, and then the other half is like when can I get out to the field and film it and get a video together and out. Sometimes it goes quick and sometimes it's not, especially if I hit a snag. Like I go out to the field and it dumps into the ground and I have to rebuild part. Now I got to go back. I got to fix it. It's like, maybe it has promise, but maybe I go, oh, that wasn't promising at all, and it's like, do I go back to the drawing board and start all over, or do I try to fix what I've got? But then it's like, okay, well, this is that time of year where you get 1 or 2 shots a week to go out and fly it.
Yeah.
I work during the day, I work during the daylight hours. So by the time I come home, it's dark, just like you. And it is one of those things where you get two days on the weekend. And, if you planned it right, you're smart and you get out on Saturday morning and you give it a first shot. And if it doesn't work, you go back home, you fix it, you get a second shot in that day. And then if you need to, one on Sunday. But I don't know about you, but I got life. It tends to be in the way. And that's the other thing. That's the biggest issue I foresee facing in this project, is that I have the scout fly-in, the scout camp-in that we do all the flying stuff is pretty much the first week of February. So I've got all the prep to do with that. And that's not going to be easy at all.
No.
At all. To be able to do the one and then the other. So I don't know. I'm going to try to figure out so if I'm smart, I get it done early so I don't have to think about it, or I get the fly-in stuff done and then all I'm worrying about is this other. But life is going to get in the way. It's a busy time of year. Basketball season is upon us. So my mornings on Saturday are gone, most likely, as they start to play basketball games. I don't know how the Omicron is going to do switching that around, but we'll see. One thing at a time, right?
That's a thing.
It is a thing. It seems to be getting to be a bigger thing as time goes. But I don't know. Those are the things I'm thinking about. Most of the build techniques are pretty straightforward. I don't know if you've considered about plans, Joe. Have you?
What do you mean?
Well, one of the requirements is having a plan set together.
Oh. I mean, if mine succeeds, then it's going to be fairly straightforward as far as, here's dimensions. I mean, I'm going to be tracking them as I go.
Yeah, as long as you track it as you go. That should be easy. And if they need something a little more final or official, they'll reach out to me. I should be able to help you out with that. But yeah, it's one of those things, man. It's mostly the tight deadline that's got me the most worried. I know what it takes to get 4 planes built that you don't have to design. 4 planes built together, flown, and filmed in a month, and that is an undertaking in and of itself.
Yeah.
The design portion sometimes goes quick, sometimes not. Sometimes there's iterations, and that's usually that's where it starts to get difficult.
Well,
so
hopefully you don't need more than 1 or 2 iterations.
It's the same here. I was about to say the same to you. Like, may we not have to do any iterations at all. So I'm hoping, but this is fun though. And if you haven't gone to the flight test forums, there's a thread there. And I know the Hangar RC's flight deck, there's a thread there, as well as where the build off competition requirements are. He's got those, the Hangar RC. Let's see, the hangarrc.com/build off. And that's also the rightmost topic on his topic list on the top of the page. So go check out the requirements. Throw your hat in the ring. What's the worst that could happen? You get a lot closer to having a plane.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really that bad of an idea. And if you're worried about the electronics, don't worry too much. If you have a BPAC motor from Flight Test, use that. It'll work the same. If not, Amazon will bring you one of those that are specified to your door in 2 days, usually. If you're in the US, I don't know what it's like in other countries, but I imagine it's almost the same anywhere on the planet. It seems, but I know that's not entirely true. But yeah, Amazon has them, so you can get them easy.
Good.
So I guess that brings us to what's on our workbench, right? Anything else?
I kind of figured that is what's on the workbench.
Well, I've got the Marabou.
Okay.
Like I said, I started it, and that's one of those ones that's a very different technique. And I'm doing the foam board version. I still have a quad I wanted to put together. I don't know how I didn't put it together, didn't get it running this break. And otherwise, yeah, you're right. It's these 2 projects. These 2 submissions. I'm going to pick one I want to go with and then go with it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, I'll kind of be working on that, and also hopefully getting some more planes hung to the ceiling.
Yeah.
Get those out on the floor.
The eyelets are working out good so far?
In theory. Like I said, I was gone for a lot of Christmas break.
Well, none of them have fallen down, have they?
Not yet.
Okay, there you go. Has a cat jumped up on it and sat down?
I mean, the only ones I can reach are the ones that are on the floor. So,
and
for whatever reason, they haven't. So that's nice.
That's a good thing, right? Nice. Okay. Yeah. Well, good. So,
right, well,
we might as well get ourselves out of here, huh?
Yeah. If you don't have anything else.
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, guys, as always, thank you for tuning in and listening. We hope you've enjoyed listening to us as much as we've enjoyed having this conversation. If you want to reach out to us, feel free to reach out to aviationrcnoob@gmail.com, or you can reach me at joe@aviationrcnoob.com or Matthew@aviationrcnoob.com. feel free to swing by our Facebook page, say hey, or hop into our Discord. I'll try to remember to throw a link to our Discord server in the show notes. You can click that, join in on the Discord server where we hang out and share pictures and projects what we're working on, just hang out and have a good time. And just a quick reminder, if you're interested in getting a listener cup, send us an email. Let us know where you're from, just kind of general area, your favorite episode, and that was it for that requirement.
That was it. We also have a topic for the Design Build Challenge for 2022 Hang RC Design Build Challenge. It's on our forums if you want to reach over, come out and hang out with us and talk about it if you'd like. There's another spot for you.
Oh, yeah. We set up a channel in the Discord server for people to talk about that stuff. All right. And if there's nothing else.
Nope.
All right. Well, we'll get out of here. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. See you later.